The African sun blazed over the golden grasslands of Gazelle, where life and death intertwined with every breath. Under the broad canopy of a cagelia tree, Leona lay motionless. Her yellowish-gray coat reflected the sunlight, but couldn't hide her emaciated form after weeks of mourning. Her ribs showed with each breath, her amber eyes staring vacantly into space. 3 weeks earlier, her only son had succumbed to a severe illness during this harsh, dry season, leaving Leona alone with an inexpressible grief. The death of her cub had transformed Leona. She was no longer the formidable hunter of the Eastern Pride, no longer participating in group hunts or moments of social interaction. Pain had separated her from the world she once belonged to. Days passed as Leona wandered alone across the grasslands, occasionally hunting small prey, not from hunger, but simply to keep her instincts from fading in her endless sorrow. That morning seemed no different until Leona approached the banks of the Ambacelli River. The water was shallow in the dry season, merely a thin ribbon flowing through the arid land. From a distance, she spotted a herd of Thompson's gazelles crossing the river. Her hunting instinct awakened. Leona crouched in the tall grass, each step light, her body pressed against the hot ground. The adult gazelles crossed the water without difficulty, but behind them, a baby gazelle struggled with the current. Fate can sometimes be cruel. In an instant, the small gazelle stumbled on a submerged rock, fell, and the current carried him away from the herd. When he tried to stand on trembling legs, the herd had already disappeared behind a cloud of savannah dust, leaving their young one lost and alone. Leona moved closer, each step perfectly calculated. The baby gazelle, later to be known as Thabo, was completely unaware of death approaching step by step. He made weak calls for his mother, his large round eyes filled with fear as they scanned around for safety that was no longer there. Just a few meters more, and Leona would end the brief life of this tiny creature. But then something happened, a moment when the laws of nature seemed to be reversed. Leona stopped. In her amber eyes, there was a look not of a predator, but of strange curiosity. The baby gazelle, wet and trembling, made a sound almost like the cry of a newborn lion cub. Perhaps it was that sound or the scent of innocence and vulnerability that touched a deep corner of Leona's soul, where the pain of losing her cub was still fresh. Instead of making the final leap, Leona slowly approached with the caution that only a mother could have. The baby gazelle stood still, a stone, too frightened to flee, too weak to resist. When Leona touched him, not with her sharp teeth, but with the gentle lick of her warm tongue, the world seemed to hold its breath. She licked away the water droplets from his tiny body, warming his cold skin, just as she had once done with her lost cub. Throughout that day, a miracle continued to unfold on the savannah. Leona didn't leave Thabo's side for a moment. When the little gazelle collapsed from exhaustion, she nudged him to his feet with her nose. When he trembled from cold, she lay close beside him, using her body heat to protect him. She led him to patches of tender grass where he could find food and kept watch while he ate. In a world where everything followed the rules of predator and prey, Leona and Thabo were writing a different story. A story of love that transcended all boundaries. As sunset descended over the grasslands, Leona led Thabo to a dense thicket. She lay down and, with a gesture full of tenderness, created a protective circle around the little gazelle. The Thabo, less afraid after a day with a predator who was no longer a predator, curled up beside Leona. In the last light of day, a lioness and a baby gazelle slept side by side. An unimaginable image in the wild, proof that sometimes maternal love can overcome even the strongest instincts. Dawn awakened Ambieli with brilliant golden light. Leona woke first, her vigilant eyes scanning the area before gently licking Thabo's head. The little gazelle woke up, no longer trembling with fear as he had the day before. After a night's rest, he was stronger, but still too young and weak to survive alone in the harsh savannah. Leona led Thabo to a small waterhole not far away. While the gazelle drank, she stood guard, ears prick-ricked, nose testing the air, eyes sharp as knives scanning every bush. This was predator territory, and their strange relationship would not be accepted by all. When they had both drunk enough water, Leona gently nudged Thabo into the shade of nearby bushes, where they could hide from the fierce midday African sun. On a hilltop not far away, a jeep from the reserve stopped, its engine cutting off. Eliza Morgan, a woman with neatly tied brown hair and sun-tanned skin, after many years working under the African sun, pointed her binoculars toward the strange pair head of mammal research at the reserve. She had received reports from patrolling rangers about unusual behavior from a lioness marked as Mile 7 in their tracking system. "Leona! Unbelievable," Eliza whispered, not trusting her eyes. She handed the binoculars to Marcus, her longtime colleague, sitting beside her. "In all my years studying lions, I've never seen anything like this." Marcus, a tall man with salt and pepper beard and keen blue eyes, looked through the binoculars and couldn't hide his amazement either. "Oxytocin," he said after a moment of silence. "Perhaps the maternal love hormone is governing her behavior. I've read about this phenomenon in some animal species, but never witnessed it in lions." Eliza signaled the team to keep their distance, not wanting to interrupt this strange relationship. They set up a remote observation station, installing high-zoom cameras and super-sensitive microphones to record every interaction between Leona and Thabo. While the scientists began their work, Leona and Thabo continued their strange new life. The young gazelle grazed on soft green grass while Leona lay guard nearby, occasionally closing her eyes for a nap, but with ears still alert. Sometimes she would stand up, circle around Thabo, and lick his fur with astonishing gentleness from a creature born to hunt. As the sun rose high, the air filled with heat. A figure appeared on the horizon. Leona recognized the scent before seeing the shape. Her body tensed like a violin string, eyes not leaving the approaching figure. It was Thabo, her pride's male leader, with his thick black man and magnificently large body. But now his appearance didn't bring the sense of security Leona once felt. Instead, a deep fear rose, not for herself, but for the small life lying in the shade not far away. Thabo approached with a confident gait of a ruler. He had followed Leona's scent, perhaps to bring her back to the pride, or simply curious about her prolonged absence. When he saw the gazelle, his eyes lit up, an easy meal lying right before him. Without a moment's hesitation, Leona leaped to stand between Thabo and Thabo, her entire body tensed, fur standing on end, fangs exposed, a threatening growl emerging from deep in her throat. This wasn't the ordinary growl of a lioness. This was the primitive and fierce sound of a mother protecting her child. Thabo stopped, confused by Leona's unexpected reaction. In the world of lions, social order is very clear. Male lions dominate and females submit, especially in matters related to hunting. But before him, Leona was challenging every rule, every instinct that nature had deeply encoded in their DNA through millions of years of evolution. Thabo took another step, trying to circle around to approach the gazelle. Leona's reaction was even more violent. She didn't just growl, but lunged forward, fangs bared, claws ready, a clear declaration of war. The message couldn't be mistaken. Touch Thabo and you'll face her fury. Thabo wasn't used to being challenged, especially by a lioness. He roared, a sound that echoed across the savannah, then moved toward Leona. For a moment, the air seemed to freeze as the two lions faced each other. On one side, the overwhelming strength of a mature male lion. On the other, the fierce determination of maternal love. The confrontation seemed endless, but finally, perhaps because of the resolve in Leona's eyes, or perhaps because some part of Thabo recognized this wasn't a fight worth having, the male lion backed down. With one last meaningful look, he turned away and disappeared behind the tall bushes, leaving Leona breathing heavily but victorious. Only when Thabo was out of sight did Leona return to Thabo. The little gazelle was trembling, not fully understanding the danger that had passed, but sensing the tension in the air. Leona licked him gently on the head, a reassuring gesture, then led him deeper into the bushes, where they would be harder to find. From their observation post, Dr. Eliza and the research team had recorded the entire confrontation. "This isn't just random protective behavior," Eliza remarked as she reviewed the footage. "Leona is ready to risk her life to protect Thabo. This behavior is much deeper and more complex than we thought." Sarah, a young team member, nodded in agreement. The oxytocin hormone might be having a powerful effect here. It's called the love hormone, not just for its role in romantic love, but because it promotes mother-child bonding. "I think Leona has literally adopted Thabo. The problem is," Marcus added, his deep voice full of concern, "Thabo won't give up easily. He'll be back, and next time he might not be alone." Marcus's warning hung in the air, an ominous prediction of what might come. But for now, under the distant tree shade, Leona and Thabo had found a rare moment of peace, a lioness and a baby gazelle connected by an invisible bond that even natural instinct couldn't break. The fourth day passed in relative peace. Leona and Thabo had developed a routine. Mornings, moving to the waterhole, then finding shade to shelter during the intense heat, and when evening fell, they moved to fresh grass patches for Thabo to feed. Their relationship had deepened, the little gazelle now completely trusting his strange protector, sometimes even playing around Leona, making little joyful jumps that only young ones do. At the research station, Dr. Eliza's team took turns monitoring this strange pair 24/7. They recorded every interaction, every behavior, building a detailed picture of the amazing relationship between predator and prey. Their research had not only scientific value, but also opened new understanding about animals' ability to overcome instinct, about the complexity of their emotional lives. But the peace didn't last long. On the morning of the fifth day, when Leona and Thabo were by the waterhole, a familiar sound rang out from a distance, Ta's roar. But this time, it wasn't just him alone. Thabo had returned with two other male lions from his pride, a powerful alliance that few creatures in the savannah would dare challenge. Leona was immediately alert. She pushed Thabo behind her, eyes not leaving the three approaching shadows. This time, her chances of victory were almost non-existent. A lioness, however strong and determined, cannot face three mature male lions. Thabo and his allies approached with absolute confidence, spreading out to surround Leona and Thabo. This was basic hunting strategy, and this time Leona was the one at a disadvantage. She spun around trying to keep Thabo behind her and face all three attackers, but it was an impossible task. Thabo moved first. He lunged from the right, forcing Leona to react. In the moment, she turned to deal with Thabo. One of the other male lions charged toward Thabo. The frightened gazelle tried to escape, but was too slow. The male lion caught him, sharp teeth sinking into Thabo's hind leg. The small gazelle's cry of pain tore through the morning air. Leona reacted with unimaginable speed and strength. She lunged at the male lion attacking Thabo, claws digging deep into his shoulder, forcing him to release his prey. But as she did so, Thabo was right behind her. A powerful lunge from him nearly ended the fight, but Leona turned just in time, his teeth grazing her mane instead of her throat. The battle turned fierce. Leona fought as she had never fought before, with the frenzy of a mother protecting her child. Roars, lunges, the sound of claws, tearing flesh echoed across the savannah. In the chaos, Thabo tried to escape, dragging his injured body toward nearby bushes. Eventually, the power imbalance began to take effect. Leona, however brave and determined, could not face three male lions. She was cornered, her body covered in wounds, her breathing labored. But even now, her eyes never left Thabo, still full of determination to protect. And then, like a miracle falling from the sky, the sound of a Jeep engine rang out. The reserve team's vehicle charged into the area at high speed, horn blaring. Thabo and his two allies, surprised by the appearance of humans, temporarily retreated, creating an opportunity for Leona to escape from being surrounded. Without a moment's hesitation, she rushed toward the bushes where Thabo was hiding. The little gazelle lay there, his hind legs soaked in blood, trembling with pain and fear. Leona gently licked the wound, trying to clean it, but the bite was too deep. Thabo needed medical care or he wouldn't survive the night. In the Jeep, Dr. Eliza, Marcus, and Sarah faced a difficult decision. They had intervened to stop the attack, breaking their rule of non-inference in nature, but now they had to decide whether to continue interfering to save Thabo or let nature take its course. The debate was brief but intense. Each person was keenly aware that this decision went far beyond ordinary research. This wasn't just science. This was a decision about life and death, about the boundary between observation and intervention, about human responsibility toward the natural world. Finally, after seeing how Leona risked her life to protect Thabo, how she tended to his wounds with unimaginable gentleness, they reached a decision. They would save Thabo not just for the research value, but because of a deep feeling that they couldn't stand by and watch such a wonderful relationship end in tragedy. The plan was made in urgency. They would create a distraction large enough to attract Leona's attention, allowing another group to approach and take Thabo away. The issue was how to do this without causing more harm to the two creatures who had already experienced so much pain. As sunset fell, they began to act. Sarah drove the Jeep to a distant position, playing a recorded sound of a lion cub in danger, a call no mother could ignore. As predicted, Leona reacted immediately. She looked toward the sound, then back at Thabo, torn between two responsibilities. After a moment of hesitation, instinct spoke. With a gentle lick on Thabo's head, she rushed toward the cry, believing the gazelle would be safe in the bushes until she returned. That was the opportunity Eliza and the medical team had been waiting for. They quickly approached Thabo, gently placed him on a stretcher, and carried him to the vehicle. The little gazelle was too weak to resist, his large, round eyes looking at them with fear mixed with exhaustion. Within minutes, they had left the scene, leaving behind empty bushes and a lioness who would soon return to find her adopted child gone. At the reserve's veterinary station, Thabo received the most dedicated care. His wound was cleaned, stitched, and carefully bandaged. Daniel, a young veterinarian with intelligent blue eyes and skilled hands, believed the gazelle would recover completely, though he might be left with a slight limp. All that night, a security camera placed near the bushes recorded Leona's return. She searched everywhere, making heartbreaking cries when she couldn't find Thabo. The scene made the hearts of those watching at the research station so ache. They knew they had done right by Thabo, but that didn't ease the feeling of guilt when seeing Leona's pain. "We did the right thing," Eliza said, her voice unable to hide her emotion. But that doesn't mean it was easy. In the following days, they monitored both Leona and Thabo from a distance. The lioness remained in the bush area, as if still hoping Thabo would return. She grew thinner, hunted less, spending most of her time lying in the shade, her amber eyes staring vacantly into space, an image of loss and grief. Meanwhile, Thabo gradually recovered at the veterinary station. Under dedicated care, his wounds healed quickly. From a weak and frightened creature, he gradually became healthy and curious. His large brown eyes looked at the new world with wonder and interest. But even when healthier, whenever he heard a lion's roar from afar, he would still startle and look around, as if searching for the familiar shape of his unexpected protector. The big question now was, what would they do with Thabo when he fully recovered? Releasing him into the wild alone would be equivalent to a death sentence. A young gazelle without a herd would quickly become prey for the savannah's predators, but keeping him in the reserve would deprive him of the natural life he deserved. The solution came with hopeful news. A herd of Thompson's gazelles was moving toward the northern part of the reserve, possibly the herd from which Thabo had separated when he got lost at the river. This was an opportunity for Thabo to return to the world he belonged to live as a real gazelle. The plan was set. When Thabo's wounds had fully healed and the gazelle herd was close enough, they would take him to a safe position near the herd, where he could see and smell his kind, but still far enough not to cause a fearful reaction from the herd. Then they would let Thabo decide for himself, stay or find his way back to his herd. That day came faster than they thought. After just a week of care, Thabo had fully recovered with only a faint scar on his hind leg, reminding of his strange adventure. The gazelle herd had come close, moving through a valley about 5 kilometers from the reserve station. That morning, the Amboseli sky was crystal clear without a hint of cloud. Eliza, Marcus, Sarah, and Daniel placed Thabo in the vehicle, careful and gentle. The gazelle was now accustomed to their presence, no longer afraid as in the early days. On the contrary, he seemed curious and excited about the trip, his eyes bright and ears perked up excitedly. The journey to the valley took place in silence. Each person was immersed in their own thoughts about the meaning of the story they had witnessed, about the magical bond between Leona and Thabo, about the lessons that nature had taught them, especially Eliza, who had spent her life studying animal behavior but had never seen anything like this, a living testament to animals' ability to overcome their most primal instincts, to love and protect even when the object of that love belongs to a species that would normally be prey. As they approached the valley, the scene before them surprised everyone. The gazelle herd was larger than they had thought, hundreds grazing leisurely under the morning sun. A peaceful scene beyond expectation in a wild world usually full of survival battles. They stopped the vehicle at a safe distance, close enough for Thabo to see and smell the herd, but far enough not to cause unwanted attention. When the door opened, Thabo didn't rush to jump out. Instead, he stood still, sniffing the air, his eyes wide open, looking toward the distant gazelle herd. "He's considering," Daniel whispered, between our familiar world and the world he belongs to." They stood in silence, not wanting to influence Thabo's decision. This was the moment when he had to choose for himself between the safety of the reserve and the freedom of the wild savannah. Then, as if having made a decision, Thabo stepped out of the vehicle. He walked slowly at first, occasionally stopping to look around as if searching for a familiar shape, the shape of his unexpected protector. But gradually, as the scent of his kind grew stronger, his steps became more confident, faster. The gazelle herd had noticed the presence of a new member. Some lead animals raised their heads, alert but not afraid. As Thabo moved closer, a mature female gazelle, perhaps a mother who had lost her young, moved toward him. There was a tense moment when the two animals faced each other, but then the female gazelle accepted Thabo, allowing him to walk alongside her. From a distance, the research team watched Thabo gradually integrate into the herd. From a lost gazelle, nurtured by a lioness, then cared for by humans, now he had returned to the world he belonged to. A wonderful journey had closed, but the lessons from that journey would last forever. "We did the right thing," Eliza said, her voice full of emotion, both for Thabo and for Leona. "But I still feel guilty about Leona." Sarah admitted she will never know Thabo is safe, that her sacrifice wasn't in vain. Eliza placed a hand on her young colleague's shoulder. "Sometimes, Sarah, in the natural world, as in life, we have to make difficult decisions without ever knowing the final outcome. Leona taught us that she risked her life to protect a creature that by all laws of nature should have been her prey. That was a brave act rising above instinct, rising above our understanding of the wild world." As the vehicle slowly drove away, the last image they saw was Thabo grazing among his herd, a faint scar on his hind leg, the only mark of the extraordinary adventure he had experienced. Somewhere in the vast savannah, Leona continued her life, perhaps still searching for the strange child who had brought her an unexpected love. In the final scientific report on this event, Dr. Eliza Morgan wrote, "We witnessed one of the rarest phenomena in nature, the ability to overcome the most primal instincts to love and protect even when the object of that love belongs to a species that would normally be prey." What Leona did raises questions about the complexity of animal emotional lives, about the thin line between instinct and emotion, and about the true meaning of the word natural in the wild world. The story of Leona and Thabo quickly spread beyond the boundaries of scientific research, touching the hearts of people from all walks of life. Because, after all, it was a story about love, a love that transcended all boundaries, a love that even the strongest instincts couldn't prevent. And somewhere in the vast savannah of Ambosale, under the deep blue African sky, two souls, a lioness and a baby gazelle, wrote a story that no one could have imagined, a story that nature perhaps had not predetermined but had allowed to unfold in a magical moment of life.